This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are on the road this week. I feel like I'm having flashbacks. If you've been a long-time listener to this show, you know that in the early days, I would record episodes from wherever I was traveling. I've done shows from Bali to Mexico City to Jerusalem to Delhi. Well, today's not such a glamorous place as those were. I'm actually here in Washington, D.C. this week. We just wrapped up teaching the day-and-a-half version of the Disruptive Ideation Workshop. That was a public workshop. We don't do that very often. In fact, I think it's been 3, 4, maybe even 5 years since the last time I've done that workshop just open to the public. So we had a good group. We purposely keep those classes small, but had a great time teaching that. And then actually tomorrow we are teaching a one-day version of that for one organization. So while I'm here in DC, I'm actually sitting, like I said, in this Holiday Inn Express in Dumfries, Virginia, and I am recording this week's show. So not quite as glamorous as I said, like Bali or London or Jerusalem, where I've, in the early days, while I was at HP, traveling the globe, I get to go to a Holiday Inn Express now these days. So today's show is around the value of innovation. The value of innovation. The question I'm really trying to address today is around knowing what's important. When you think about the mission of innovation, why do organizations, why do individuals want to invent? What drives them to invent something new that they are going to bring to the market? It's to solve problems, create opportunities, remove barriers, deliver the wow, right? The pride of having created something from nothing. The ultimate, though, is all those add up to really around creating value. The person on the other side, the person who you've made it for, the organization that you created it for, the team that's going to use whatever it is you are inventing, they are attaching some kind of value to it. So the question I have is what is that value? How do you find out what people value? Well, first off do you really know the who? Who is actually going to benefit from the thing that you're working on? You may think you know, but do you really know? So for instance, there's a lot of efforts, and I've been coaching and mentoring a number of organizations, particularly in the health and medical space, looking at creating new innovations to improve people's health, help people live longer, deliver better outcomes. And when you ask them about who gets the value, there's not an agreement, because we have a very complex health system here in the United States in the form of you go to your doctor, but between you and your doctor are things like insurance companies. So if you're going to create value, is the value the end customer, the end person, the person whose health gets improved? Or in this case, is it the insurance company? Or is it the doctor? Even though I'm going to maybe do something that increases someone's longevity, the end result is I get paid by an insurance company. So in this case, it's like a business to consumer. So when you're trying to determine value around innovation, you really have to know who is your target, who is going to get the benefit of what it is you are creating. Now, and I said, you think you know who they are, you think you can empathize with them, you think you can, in your head, rationalize what they would value and how they would value it. But I'm here to tell you, odds are you're wrong. In fact, I will bet you are wrong. We are not a good proxy for the people who would benefit from our ideas. Now, we may think we're creating it for ourselves, and therefore it's got all these kinds of great capabilities, but in reality, we're too close to it. I remember back when I was CTO at HP, and I wasn't there too long, and an engineer came in and came up and was walking through a new product line. It was a laptop, if I recall correctly. So we would have these roadmap product reviews where the engineers would be pitching changes or new features or differentiators to a product line prior to getting the green light to go ahead and move those products or move those ideas forward. So this engineer is standing up there and he's doing a really great pitch around the product line and how it's been doing. And then he gets into the enhanced features. And these are the new features that will be highlighted in the promotion and what they really think consumers are really going to gravitate to and why they would buy this product over, let's say, somebody else's product. Now, this engineer goes on for about 20, 25 minutes. At the end of that 20, 25 minutes, I look at him and I go, okay, I think I get it, but tell me, what customer asked for this particular feature? Did we get it on a feedback form? Did they call into customer care? Did we derive it from, user surveys, focus groups? Well, where did this idea come from? And this engineer stands up straight, very prideful, looks right at everybody in the room and goes, oh, no. I came up with this idea because this would be a feature I would really want. Now, in reality, this particular feature, and the reason I asked that question of him was because of the technical nuances, the complexity that this feature would add to the product. I looked at this engineer and I said, well, that's great. You just designed a product that has a market size as far as total customers of the 37,000 engineers here at Hewlett-Packard. Because it would take an HP engineer to figure out how to use that feature. The engineer made the mistake of putting themselves into that perspective of them being the target customer, and they are not the target customer. You need to get out of your chair, you need to go out, and you need to observe. In fact, over all my years at HP, on most Saturdays, you would find me standing in Best Buy. I would just stand there and watch people buy product. Now, if a customer at a Best Buy store walked up and looked at an HP product and looked at all the other products and selected somebody else's laptop or somebody else's printer, I would walk up, I'd hand them my business card. Odds are that would freak them out. But I'd say, no, I'm not here to change your mind. What I want to understand is to what caused you to look at this product but buy another product. You looked at this HP laptop, but you bought this Dell, or you bought this Acer, or you bought this Apple product. What was it that was the turning factor in the actual right in the moment buying decision? Because the answer to that question conveyed to me what they valued. Was it the hard drive, size of the screen, the weight, the color, what was it? What was it that is the thing that they valued so much that flipped the decision not to buy my product, but to buy a different product? So whatever your innovation is, whatever you are working on, do you really understand that who and what they value? Because the value of innovation, that's what it's going to be. That's what we're going to talk about for the rest of today's show. And we're going to continue that when we come back from this quick commercial break. If you've got an upcoming guest where you think an upcoming guest would be great for the show, drop me a note, Phil at killerinnovations.com. Would love to hear your suggestions. We've actually got a number of guests coming up. We will be at CES recording the shows as we do every year. That'll be the first week of January. And we would love to hear your feedback. We would love to hear your guest suggestions. We want to make sure that we're delivering content that you value. Just like we're talking about the value of innovation, we want to deliver content that you value and that helps you succeed. Drop us a note. And with that, we're going to be right back after this quick and short commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. Welcome back. This is Phil McKinney. We are talking today about the value of innovation and knowing what is important to the who, the person, the organization, the team that is getting value from whatever it is you're inventing. One of the keys to understanding the value, we were talking about it in the last segment, about needing to get up out of the chair. And in my case, I would stand in the Best Buy stores and watch people buy product. Whatever it is that you need to do to get that interaction is critically important. But it isn't just about observing. While I was able to take advantage of some of those capabilities of just being able to observe and capture what they valued at the time, one of the key characteristics or understandings you need to be able to grasp is their perspective. You need to know a little bit about the people, the who you're targeting, because that perspective has a huge influence on that decision making. It isn't just that they buy a hard drive because it's a bigger number, so you just got to throw a bigger hard drive in a laptop and you're going to sell more. Not the case. Understanding the perspective, why that hard drive? Maybe they generate a lot of documents, they do graphics, they record a lot of videos, and therefore that is what drives it. You need to understand that next level. Perfect example of this is my wife. Now, this is a story that I've actually shared in the book. It's one of those stories that people, when they run into me and I introduce them to my wife, if we're out and about traveling or at a trade show or something, they will always ask her if the story is true. And I can attest that the story is true. I can also attest that she hates the fact that I put the story in the book. So what is this story? So this is back, I'm going to say 2008, 2009, something in that time frame, maybe 2010. So my son was into sports. He was a fencer. So we would be traveling around the country and he would be competing in these fencing competitions. In this particular case, we are in Las Vegas for the weekend. He's competing. Typically, they're Saturday, Sunday, 2-day events. So it's Sunday evening. He's doing quite well. He's actually winning, which means he keeps fencing, which means we're running out of time to get to the airport to catch our flight. So he finishes up. We throw all of his gear into the bag. I don't even let him take a shower. We go dashing to the airport in Las Vegas. We're huffing and puffing in because we've got to check bags because of all the gear he needs to compete. And I'm frantic, checking my phone, right? And the person at the check-in counter for Southwest goes, "Oh, don't worry, the flight's been delayed for a little bit. You got plenty of time." I'm like, boy, thank goodness. And she goes, yeah, no, the flight to Phoenix has been delayed 45 minutes. And I looked at her and go, oh, there must be some mistake. We're not going to Phoenix. We're going to San Jose. And she goes, no, your ticket is Las Vegas, Phoenix. I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, no, you're Las Vegas to Phoenix, Phoenix, LA, LA, San Jose. I'm like, whoa. It's a 1 hour, 5-minute flight, Las Vegas to San Jose. And I'm being routed from Las Vegas to Phoenix to LA to San. That's a 6-hour odyssey. What? So I called my wife. I'm like, honey, what's going on here? What happened with the tickets? What? She goes, oh, no. That's great. She goes, I'm saving $20. by routing you guys this way. So here I am. I'm the CTO for Hewlett Packard, and my wife values 6 hours of my time at $20. Yes, I know you're probably laughing hysterically hearing me tell you this story. It was not funny at the time at all. But that's the way my wife thinks. Now, why does she think that way? How does she value looking at time and money? My wife is the most frugal person in the world. She won't spend money on herself unless you literally force her to do it. But why? Why is she grew up in Northwest Indiana. She's one of 6. Her dad was a steel worker who worked double shifts every day of the week in order to provide for 6 kids. Now, if you know anything about the steel industry in the 70s, steel mills would close, they would reopen, they'd be shut down for a year, they'd be restarted. And during that time, she had multiple experiences of losing the house she lived in, having the house repossessed by the bank, or not being able to pay rent. So she had multiple times having to go and live with other family members while the family was trying to figure that out. So having that instability had a big, huge influence on her. So when she looks at the value of money, that buys into her decision. So when you're thinking about the value of innovation, you may think it's valuable. You may be able to run some kind of funky spreadsheet to show what the value impact. It doesn't matter. It's the perspective of the person who is going to buy or exchange something to get the value you're delivering. Are they going to buy your product, buy your service, buy your expertise? It doesn't matter what you think. It matters what they think, and it matters what their perspective is. And that becomes an important piece of understanding. And what we also find is that particularly in couples where there's a buying decision, but that involves a husband and wife, let's say, uses an example, that perspective can be completely different. When I first got to HP again, I also had the TV business. I would go into Best Buy. I would make my wife go with me so I would not look like a weird stalker dude. And I would, kind of scoop myself up, and I'm watching a couple looking at the TVs and trying to get the buy decision. Which TV are they going to buy? Now, this may sound sexist. It is not intended to be sexist. This was just one example. Walk up to this couple. The husband's looking at that TV and he goes, wow, 65 inches and 120 millisecond refresh, 4 HDMIs, right? He's rattling off all the tech specs and he's just awed by this TV. The wife looks at it, looks at the TV, looks at him and goes, but it doesn't match the furniture. Now, let me ask you, who won the argument? You're right. She won the argument. It's one of the reasons why every TV hanging on the wall is black, right? You don't see color variations. All the chrome is gone black because black goes with whatever furniture is in the house. So you have to understand who makes the decision and what they value and their perspective. And you cannot assume you know what's best, because guess what? You do not know what's best. So for the value of innovation, you need to understand the who, and you need to understand their perspective. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, and we'll continue this conversation on the value of innovation. Welcome back. Let's continue our conversation around the value of innovation. Now, beyond simply being able to understand how people make the decision, my story or example, standing at Best Buy and watching people buy printers and laptops, or understanding what they value and understanding their perspective, the story of my wife and how she grew up and how that influenced her perspective on the value of money, or how different people that are part of a decision can look at a product and make completely radically different perspectives. The husband in this story all focused on the technical specs. The wife is focused on it doesn't match the furniture. What I'm going to talk about now, though, is when you think about the value of innovation, for that who, whether it's a person, a team, an organization, part of the creation of value from innovation is to create more value than the raw goods, right? If you can wrap it up and create more value than the raw good elements, that's where people, in many cases, will attach value and pay a premium. So assuming you can understand the person, you can understand the perspective, now the key is in the actual innovation is how do you create that enhanced value? So for instance, I came across this meme on, I don't know, Twitter or Facebook or one of the social media platforms, right? It's this picture of this iron bar. Now, if you went out to buy an iron bar, it'll cost you about $5, right? You can go to a warehouse area and buy yourself a bar of iron for $5. Now, if you take that same amount of iron and pound it out and turn it into horseshoes, the number of horseshoes you can get out of a bar of iron equates to about $12. Now, I had a horse farm. That's why I know what that number is. $12. So now the iron is the same amount of iron, but transferring it from a bar of iron, turning into horseshoes, creates $12. Now, you take that same bar of iron and put it through some form of a manufacturing process, and you make needles, sewing needles. That same bar of iron that you buy for $5 turns into $3,500 of needles. Same amount of iron, but you've transformed that into a value of $3,500 by turning it into needles. You take that same bar of iron and you turn it into balance springs for watches. That bar of iron, which is $5, now is worth $300,000. That's right. Same iron, $5, is now worth $300,000 worth of balance springs. Amazing, isn't it? You take a raw commodity item, iron, put it through some form of the benefit of an innovation effort, and you create value. Now, you could argue that creating value correlates to the amount of innovation effort. How much innovation effort does it take to build and manufacture horseshoes? Not a whole lot. A little bit more to make sewing needles. A lot more innovation effort and creativity and creating machines and such to make balance springs. So you go from $5 to $12 to $3,500, ultimately to $300,000 for balance springs for watches. That is where value gets created from innovation. Take the raw goods, produce something that the who values, and they will pay that premium for that. Now, another example of this is birthday cakes. So when I was growing up, my grandmother lived with us. In fact, I never knew a house without my grandmother living with us. She lived with my parents before I was even born. Now, when it came around to my birthday, I was the baby of the family, so yes, I was spoiled. I will readily admit that right out of the gate. So my grandmother would make my birthday cake from scratch, right? No, it had to be made scratch, and my grandmother took pride in that she would be the one to make my birthday cake. Now, years later, after my grandmother had passed on and my mom had taken on the responsibility of baking my birthday cake, she would make it out of the box mix, right? So keep in mind, the raw goods to make the birthday cake, probably less than $1. Now you do a Duncan Hines box mix, put an egg in it, boom, a lot easier, a lot faster, everything is there. Now that cake is what, $3, $4, whatever. But it was out of convenience. My mom would pay the premium in order to get the box mix to just be able to, so she could do it easier. It wasn't as big of a burden. She didn't have to remember the recipe or figure out if she had all the materials to do it. Years later, my mom was working full-time out of the house. My birthday came around. What did she do? She would go to the bakery, right? Ultimately easy. She just had to go in, order the cake, drive back, pick up the cake. So what started off as a $1 commodity cake, which became a $2 to $3 box cake, was now a $10, $12, $15 cake from a bakery, right? Why? The value of that convenience of being able to go to the bakery to get that cake, hugely valuable. Then ultimately today, like when my kids were growing up and now with my grandkids, oh no. Can't do the scratch cake. Definitely not gonna do the box cake. May or may not do the bakery cake. But on top of that, it has to be an experience. It has to be an event. You have to go to the, ice skating rink or the roller rink, or now they got these trampoline places. I've been to so many trampoline places with my grandkids. These things didn't exist when my kids were little, but my grandkids love them. So what do? We take them with all of their friends, and you got 30 screaming, 7-year-olds running around the trampoline place for 3 or 4 hours, right? But you pay that, and what's that? That's a couple $100 when you count pizzas and food and drinks and cake and time in the trampoline, area, all of that, right? So what started off as $1 now is a $200 to $300 experience. Why are people willing to do that? Because they value that. It's about creating memories. It's about doing these things where, the kids can invite their friends and have fun. It's all about the value creation. And in this case, it is that value creation for the innovation that people will attach to it. That's where you get innovation premium, where people will reward you for great ideas, great technologies, great products, great services with an innovation premium because they value it. Now, I will warn you, you got to be careful how you value. So I've heard people pitch innovation ideas, and the unit of value they apply to it is totally messed up. So for instance, if you valued everything by the pound, how much does a pound of cheese cost, or a pound of grapes? So for instance, Intel processors, if you valued them by the pound, $42,893. I'm looking down here in my notes, that's exactly. A Hermes scarf is $1,964, right? A DVD is $874 per pound. A Mercedes-Benz series latest car is $18.98 a pound. Hot rolled steel, 19 cents per pound. So think about it. Do you get any kind of feeling of value when you say Mercedes-Benz and you paid $18.98, $19 a pound to buy that Mercedes? The unit of value is just as important as the innovation itself some cases. Be careful on how you determine the value of innovation. Put it in the unit of measure that the person who gets the value understands, appreciates, and agrees with. You don't do that, they're not going to be interested, and you're not going to earn that innovation premium for whatever idea you got, a product, a service, a process, whatever it is you're inventing. Get the unit of value correct. That then correlates to conveying to the other person why they should reward you with an innovation premium. Don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back. When it comes to innovation value, one of the things that I get a little frustrated with when I'm out there looking at what the new things are that are coming in or coming into the market, or some new idea that has a press release that some PR person sends me, is the Me Too element of the value. We see a lot of ideas and innovations that are just Me Too. How many times have you heard someone describe their new thing as being, oh, we're the Uber of lawnmowers, or we are the Airbnbs of whatever? And we see this all the time where it's the people who are kind of using the same value component. They're conveying, you know how Uber works, you know how Airbnb works. Well, we're applying it to a completely different industry. And in some cases, okay, I'll give you credit, that might work. But the part of really conveying and wanting to earn that innovation premium is the ability to convey that value in a unique and different way. Now, if you have been a listener for a while, you know that I kind of rant on sometimes around Me Too innovations, the things that are just the same thing, just with a little twist and turn in them. And look, I get it. In fact, when I speak publicly, and I've talked about it here on the radio show, and when I teach workshops, I do share stories like, look, the iPhone was not the first smartphone, and it was not the first all-touch smartphone, right? The iPhone was number 3 or number 4 in the market. So it doesn't mean that you have to be totally radically new. There's lots of reasons why the iPhone was much more successful than, let's say, the Nokia communicator, or the iPAQ from HP Compaq, or whatever. But when it comes to Me Too, related to the value of innovation, you have to think long and hard. For instance, think about it, bottled water, right? I don't know, you walk into a grocery store these days and there's literally, thousands of different types of bottles of water. In the 1970s, there were 16 different brands total, globally, for bottled water in the 70s. In the 90s, that grew to 50. Today, in the 2010s, it's literally thousands. Milk. In the 1970s, there were 4. In the 1990s, there was 19 different kinds of milk. Today, there are literally hundreds of different kinds of milk. Almond milk and lactose-free milk, and you name it. New book titles. Look, I'm an author, kind of important. In the 1970s, 40,000 new books were released in the 70s. In the 1990s, that's 75,000 new book titles. 2010s, 300,000. And I stopped counting, trying to figure out what the real number is, particularly when you take into all the self-publishing that's out there. You don't have to go get a publishing deal with a publisher like in my case, my book's published by Hachette, but you can you can just go to Amazon and write a book and put it up there and publish it, and people buy it, and there's been bestsellers up there. So the whole model has changed, right? But how many different bottles of water are really needed? How many different milk types are needed? Of the new book titles, how many do you have time to read? I've got more books I would want to read than I have time to read. It's probably one of my biggest frustrations. But do we need 300,000 books a year to be published? Right? You can look at it from the standpoint of also brand extensions. I was standing at a Walmart in Colorado not too long ago, and I was trying to find Lay's potato chips to have it in the house and, for my grandkids. I didn't even realize how many different flavors of Lay's, Cheetos, Doritos, Fritos, there are out there. Doritos, what is it, 10, 12 different flavors of Doritos? That got me curious, and I went off and I did a little bit of analysis. And guess what? All those different flavors didn't change one iota the total brand position of Doritos. did not change the brand, did not change market share. In fact, they took the market share and they broke it down. If you roll it all back up, it's what it was from before, roughly. At least that's what online articles are saying about it. So you create all this complexity by creating all of these different flavors for what? This is the problem with Me Too kind of innovations. You need to think about value and how do people really value that? People might say, well, I really want the sour cream, but I don't want to do sour cream every day. So now you're just doing mixing and matching. Can you really convey value? Does Me Too denote value? I'm arguing no. And if we're talking about the value of innovation, you've got to get out of these Me Too. Innovation's about creating something unique, something that I value at a premium, and I'm going to reward you for your innovation efforts with that margin premium. And so with that, hopefully you found this interesting. Whatever idea you are working on, whatever business you're working in, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a small business owner, you can create differentiated value when you think long and hard about who your customer is, how they make the decision, what is the perspective that feeds into that decision, and what is the unit of value that will convey a premium that the customer agrees with and rewards you to. Don't sell everything, buy the pound. And with that, we're going to wrap up today's show. I am on the road right now. Like I said, I'm in Dumfries, Virginia, getting ready to teach a disruptive ideation workshop tomorrow here in the Washington, D.C. area. But we will be back to you real soon with another episode of Killer Innovations. In the meantime, wherever you listen to the podcast, if you could hop on over there and just give us a rating and review, we read those. There's been some recent ones over on iTunes. Greatly appreciate that. That helps get the word out. Also, if you do know someone who would be a great guest on the show, drop me a note, phil@killerinnovations.com. We're constantly looking for that. And if you will be at Consumer Electronics Show in January, drop me a note. Would love to meet up to you. We have the mobile studio, our 44-foot custom mobile studio will be with us there in Las Vegas. And with that, we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.